Hi, everybody. Diane Neto, living in Barrie. I have a pretty important thing that came to my attention yesterday over a deal I'm doing, that people assume that because you have mortgage financing and you get the approval, that it's a shoo-in that on the closing day you're going to get the money. This is not true. 1 in 5, and I found an article that explains it perfectly, do not fund on closing. Now, the issue is there's a final audit that's done, and a couple days before closing, your deal goes to a separate underwriter that hasn't seen it before, and they look it over, and if there's any questions or they have any issues or they think something's funny or they just don't like the numbers, they can pull the money on closing and not fund it. Now, I've had this happen a lot of times. One, I don't know how many years ago was 7 or 8. I had 5 closings on June 30th. Not one of them closed. This is actually a thing that happens. Like, I've had it happen lots of times. Sometimes they're asking for different documentation at the last minute and you can't get it right away. It might delay the closing a day or two. I've had other deals where they just outright refused and said, we're not doing it. So I'm going to share the screen and explain a little bit about this to you, because even a lot of agents I've talked to, they don't know this. And it's kind of important to know this. So shockingly, nearly 1 in 5 mortgage pre-approvals in Canada are denied when it comes for final approval. Oh, this isn't really the one that I want, is it? This is another thing. So changes in employment. Say all of a sudden you lose your job and they ask the week before closing for your last 2 pay stubs. This happens all the time and you don't have it. Another big thing is change in payments. Negative impacts to credit score. So over the time between when you bought the property and when you're closing the property, they recheck your credit scores, they recheck everything, and something's happened. Say one of your bills went to credit collections and your score went down. Say that you had a huge loan. Like, I've had people denied because they went to the brick and they got that don't pay a cent event for all their appliances or their furniture for the new house. You never buy those kind of things beforehand because it shows up on your credit. Another thing is going to get a car loan, buy a car in that 2 or 3 months, and now all of a sudden you have a $500 payment, and that gets worked into your debt service ratio, and now you don't look good. Boom, they're pulling the money. There's no problem with them. They get no penalties. There's nothing you can do, put it this way, if they pull the money at the last minute. I've had them pull it the day before. I've had them pull it the day of closing up for my buyers. And there's nothing you can do about it. Like, they can, and as a buyer, you can get charged, you could get sued. There's all kinds of issues you could have. But the bank, there's nothing going to happen to them. They have every right up to the final second to deny that money. And depending on the underwriter, like, you never know what you're going to get. So this is another thing that people don't understand, is that your mortgage rate, when you look at mortgage rate online, you think, oh, it's only at 4.79, but your credit's in the 600s. You're not getting 4.79. Like, it doesn't work like that. With your credit score, the lower the credit score is, the higher the interest rate's going to be. And the other issue with that is now your payment's going to be higher, and you have to qualify for that higher payment, right? With the higher rate. So here what they're talking, new and unexpected debt. So this is credit card debt. You go and buy a bunch of stuff on your credit card, a car loan, any kind of separate mortgage, or, if you decided, oh, to buy this new house, we're gonna pull a line of credit on our old house to put the down payment down. Well, that's in your debt service ratio. So you have to worry about all those things. lender guideline changes or new requirements. So they could, over the course of 2 or 3 months, they could have different guidelines or change the rules, or all of a sudden they want your I've had people where they want their separation agreement to see if they owe their ex-wife any money, and he can find it, and they ended up pulling the money totally and never ever did get it. So there's different requirements, and you have to realize that the week before or 4 or 5 days before in the final audit, they're getting a brand new person to look at all these things. So maybe the first person asked the questions and found out different things and thought, oh, okay, this is okay, and they okayed it. But now you're getting a whole other person that's looking at it and starting from scratch. It might not be okay with what they're seeing. So here it is. So the tips they're giving us to ensure that these things are going to close on closing day: embrace financial discipline. So minimize your outstanding debt in the last 90 to 120 days before your mortgage closes. So don't be going and doing anything at that time. Prepare for the worst, budget ahead. So lenders may underestimate closing costs. And you have, so, I always have a little bit extra if the land transfer tax is more than you thought, or the legal fees are more than you thought. Now, they say consider a skilled cosigner, but my thing is don't do that, because right now, really, there's no such thing as a cosigner. They just put the person on title. And if you can get away with not doing that and having an extra person in the mix, the better off you are. Whether it even be your dad, your brother, your uncle, your brother, your sister. I mean, those people are going to have to sign going forward. They don't just let them sign as a cosigner. They're on title. And then everything you want to do with your house, they're going to have to okay, or at least sign and agree, which might not be a problem, but who even wants to get into it if you don't have to, right? Job, stay put. Yes. Do not start a new job 2 weeks before closing, because they might ask you for pay stubs. They might ask you for an employment letter, and they might ask you again. Like sometimes I've had it even on my own, where 2 days before they're asking me for all this stuff. And now I'm trying to get, my employment information from my employer, my income for the year up to date, because in real estate, I'd only have one T4 a year. So they want to see, what have you done in the last 3 months? It's a nightmare, and you're scrambling. Document. So what they're saying there is just keep everything, have a nice paper trail. So if something does go down, you have everything with you. Nurture your credit standing. So be careful, especially just before closing, that you take care of that credit score. You pay your bills, you keep everything on the up and up. And open communication with your mortgage team. Transparency is paramount. Proactively raise any potential red flags with your mortgage broker while there's time to correct it. So this is a huge thing too, because if 4 or 5 years ago there was a bankruptcy, if that you had something that went into collections. I had it where we moved and we didn't even realize the $30 for Canadian Tire went into collections, and it screwed up the credit score. If you can answer the questions, if you know the situation and you tell your mortgage broker ahead of time, they can adjust for that. They can explain it. And a lot of times, there's not a problem with it. But if these things come up later on along the line and the lender knew nothing about it, it can look like you're trying to hide things. They don't trust you anymore. So you have to be careful about those things. Now here it says, what happens if my mortgage is not approved before the closing date? So you can get an extension on the closing date if there's just documents or different things that you have to do for them to release the money. A lot of times that happens, and you can just extend the closing date by a day or two until you can give the documentation. The problem is if they don't like the documentation or you can't provide it, then sometimes they just don't fund the money. And I've had where they wanted all my bank account statements for 3 months to see income coming in and to see that everything was on the up and up. So the reason right now is there was so much mortgage fraud and so much lying being done that the banks are very, very, very sticky. And, you have to be on the up and up all the way along, because something can bite you in the butt the day before closing and they just don't forward the money. And like I said, the bank has no responsibility for that. You're going to have legal fees. So the person, if you have a chain where I bought a house from this guy bought a house from this guy, okay? This guy, the money fell through. He didn't get it on the day of closing. So now this guy can't close on this house either. So now we got a chain. The guy that's responsible, there's going to be extra mortgage interest. There's going to be extra legal fees. Sometimes they have to redo the whole statement of adjustments. Well, they're going to have to do it for this, and for this. This guy that didn't close the deal to start with, he's going to have to take care of everybody's fees because he was the cause of the issue. So the first one in the chain is the one that's going to have to pay. Now, most of the time, you do end up working this out. Like it might be extended for a day or two. Sometimes, and I've had these, they just never close because they refuse to fund the money. They think you're lying about something. They don't like something. They see a big debt from a car payment and they're like, they can't service all this debt. We're not giving the money. So be careful what you do, and be careful that your mortgage broker knows everything, and just stay tight, pay your bills, and don't do anything until after the house closes. If you want to go buy $10,000 worth of furniture after, then do it. But don't do it before, because they can pull it at the last minute. Now, I hope this informed and helped some people, educated some people, because I know a lot of agents that don't even know this. And hit the like, subscribe, or drop me a comment if you have any questions, and I'll answer them or do a video for you.